it's a pleasure to be here. You're alive.
Yes, nice to meet you as well. Mucho gusto.
You. So my first question is, um, how did you decide to take all these important tips in an horror film?
Well, I read the book that Adam Caesar wrote, Clown in a Cornfield, and I was looking for a slasher. I always wanted to do a slasher again. My first movie was a kind of a parody comedy slasher film called Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And I thought, well, I had such a fun time doing that, but I made fun of all the slasher tropes that happen in movies. And I thought, well, I can't ever really do that now that I've just made fun of the whole thing. But when I read Adam Caesar's book, I thought there were elements of it that were pretty funny still, and elements that were really unique to a horror slasher. And I thought, well, I want to adapt that and keep those parts of it, and then maybe boost the humor a little bit, and make have these funny moments and then these really terrifying moments. So that was every film kind of has its goals, and for me, I'm always working on something. Like, it's me kind of playing around but trying to figure something out. And in this one, I was just really trying to figure out the balance between horror and comedy, and how much could I really have horror and still be funny, a funny film. It was that balance I was always looking for.
Yeah, it's a perfect balance. So the setting of the cornfield feels almost like a character itself, oppressive, endless, and mysterious. How
Yeah.
important was the landscape in shaping the story?
It was a part of the pitch, it was a part of the design, it was everything. It was like I wanted even these small towns basically in the Midwest of the US, they're very flat. I went to college in Colorado, which is right up against the mountains in Boulder, Colorado. And east of that is just plains as far as the eye can see. And then you have Kansas and Nebraska, and it's all cornfields. And there's something both at once like so wide open about it, but also claustrophobic. And then I thought in cornfields, especially, it's the kind of the one of the few crops that when you're in it, you can't see anything. It's above your head and you can get lost. And even we had crew that would get lost off in the corn and they'd be yelling like, "Where is everybody?" So there's something very cinematic about that, and also it kind of worked as a metaphor for what we were shooting.
The clowns often represented both innocence and terror. In your vision, does the clown in the cornfield symbolize?
Yeah, so the symbol of this clown in a cornfield is to me, I'll back up a little bit and get to the symbol because Frendo was based on a a salesman, and he was a mascot for the Bay Pen corn syrup factory. So in like the 40s and 50s in America's boom times, when these small towns were really prosperous, um, it was like a upbeat icon. And the whole town revolves around Frendo. And there's even a parade where they kind of worship Frendo. Um, and then over time, these towns have had a hard time, making a living. People are down and out a lot, and they've either had to move to the city or they haven't been able to keep up with the times. And there's a lot of anger there. So it's based in this small town, Kettle Springs, and it symbolizes Frendo really symbolizes that lost American dream, of the once upbeat American clown who is now sort of angry and vengeful, and a little distorted, like it's a distorted version of the American dream just coming after these kids, the new generation, because they don't like where they're headed. They don't like where their head is, and there needs to be a culling of the younger generation.
Yeah, I think the horror film often mirrors of the anxieties of their time. Do you think the current clown reflects a particular fear or a cultural tension from today's world?
Yeah, I think that there's The clown to me is really a symbol of like the division ultimately in the culture, you know, and film is about a generational divide. Um, and they can't see eye to eye. And really, I don't make the kids that we're following perfect, you know. In fact, they do some pretty lousy things. Um, I like that they're likable in a way, but they're very much imperfect and they do cause some trouble in the town. And then on the other side, they're not listening to the younger generation at all either. So in some ways, it's like a cautionary tale of two sides just not listening at all to each other. And if that doesn't strike a chord today, then I don't know what does, because that seems like a big problem in American culture, but really globally, it's a big problem between these like divided ethos, the divided people that just they can't cross a divide and communicate to each other. And it erupts in violence, obviously, eventually.
Yeah, I'm looking back at your career from your call but of this new film. Do you feel you have evolved as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I feel like you know, after Tucker and Dale, it was hard to know what my next film would be because I made a comedy horror that was kind of exactly what I wanted to make. And nobody knew whether I was a comedy director or a horror director, and they couldn't be the same. You either did comedy or you did horror, you know? And so I wrote some comedies, and like my next film, Little Evil, was very much a comedy first horror film. Um, but I've always loved the cinema of horror, and I've always loved just the visual style and the ability to manipulate people's emotions, and fear is such a driver, especially if you have a release for it in a film. And um, so I didn't, I had some opportunities to make like straight comedy, and I was like always shied away from it because it didn't harbor like have the whole spectrum that you could do as a filmmaker. And, you know, I mean, Clown in a Cornfield, it was a very tight budget, but we got to kind of have the whole spectrum of emotions in a film. You know, there's a love story, there's action and suspense and comedy and some silly comedy, and then some maybe deeper sort of social political commentary. So I got to play with the whole thing, and I know sometimes that frustrates people. Sometimes it's like too much for people. They want it to be like one thing. But for me, it's always an exploration for something for me. I'm trying to find something. I'm trying to improve something. So I was really trying to like hone in on the horror element with these elements of comedy and social political commentary at the same time.
Like, congratulations for the film and for your career. Thank you for your time and success.
Oh, thank you so much. Nice to meet you, Daniel.